All right, hey everybody, welcome back to Field Pass Podcast. We're in week two of the NFL now. It's September 10th, and Braden and I are here to talk about the recent happenings of last week. I don't even know how to describe last week. I guess it was almost like I felt felt like it was almost a pretty slow start. I feel like we had more disappointments than we did actual like dynasties or like I guess prospects being developed, but we'll get into that. Um, the first thing I think we want to cover is uh, now this was a good first start. This was a good start to the season in that of the season opener between the Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens, where Isaiah likely went to catch what would be the game-winning touchdown had it not been for a long toenail.
Game tying, not game winning.
Oh, sorry, game tying,
But
pardon me.
yeah,
They would have had the opportunity to win had they got the 2-point conversion. But yeah, that would have tied the game. The Chiefs ended up winning as a result of him not making that catch. So, Braden, what do you have to say about that situation? I mean, I was losing my mind here at home. Jumped right out of this chair when I saw the when I saw the catch. And I don't know, I thought for sure this was going to become like an instant classic.
I mean that catch throw was amazing. Even though it didn't count Lamar showed his clutch gene by the comeback that they had, or kind of comeback you could say. Because I believe they were down they were down 10 or 14 at one point. In that game, the and that was a great catch by Likely, great throw. There's a couple things that I thought was interesting. We found out the Ravens do not have an offensive line because they could not block anything. I've never. Chris Jones has always been like the immovable object in the middle where you just can't move him. He's just always there. But he was actually like there would be glimpses where he would get to the quarterback, but like he legit got to like in the backfield near Lamar every single play because they just didn't know what to do. Uh, their
Yeah.
their D line was our was all right. Their D line was getting pressure on Mahomes. I can't say, but their own line was awful. They had to like go to like a sort of RPO where they're throwing it 3 yards every play and just letting Zay Flowers run around, or Justice Hill or someone like that. But I thought the Chiefs looked really good. I thought that their D line, their defense played well, and their offense looked good. I mean, they had some week one issues where you don't start the best, but I feel like almost every team had that this week. So if that's their worst thing, they are in perfect shape to go on another Super Bowl run.
Yeah, I think that you're completely right. What we talked about when we talked about the Chiefs, I guess in the preseason episode that we just did, kind of I think came to fruition, especially when it comes to the way that they utilize Xavier Worthy. That dude is speedy; he can run, and the fact that the Bills gave up that pick so so uh, so they could get Xavier Worthy, I think is like actually what the hell are you doing?
The
Um,
Bills committed suicide,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, but I mean they are going to play against Xavier Worthy. Like that's the fact of the matter. In the playoffs, very likely, more likely than not, they're going to have to see that guy, and he basically has been able to remedy the main issue that Kansas City had prior to the season, in that of inconsistent and aging receiving options, and that of Travis Kelce and the former Chiefs player Kadarius Toney. So that's a problem that I think that they addressed, and they certainly proved that on a Thursday night. I think what you said about the Ravens is also completely correct. The offensive line looked absolutely abysmal. I think that fortunately they were able to remedy that a little bit by, like you said, those RPO plays, and especially Justice Hill getting open and being able on a couple of plays where Lamar would roll out of the pocket, which basically didn't exist, and then offload it to Justice Hill. But then because at that point, I guess they had like I guess they recognized that um, the line was so screwed up that they wanted to send a lot of people to try and get to Lamar as fast as they could. That there was just nobody there in the flats, and he was able to gain like 5 or 6 yard. Like, well, no, he got a first down like 2 or 3 times just off of plays like that. So I think that the more that they utilize him, the more that they'll be able to mitigate the the dumpster fire that is their offensive line right now. Granted, it was week one. On the defense, I think that they regressed a little bit, though it's kind of hard to say whether or not that's the case, especially when you're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs in week one. So I'm not ready to put my flag down on a take for either of those, but I was interested in how underutilized Mark Andrews was. I wonder if how much of that had to do with the injury and how much of that had to be with it just being week one. But look, if Isaiah Likely is a feature of this Ravens offense going forward, I think that it's going to be to the general offense's credit. The last thing I'll say about this whole thing is that those two throws by Lamar that he missed in the to tie the game prior to that likely catch were pretty bad. Like they were throws that I mean you had Zay Flowers wide open, but that wasn't really who he was throwing to. He was throwing on the crossing route instead of Zay Flowers, so I'm not really going to hold that against him. Ultimately, if you come that close to a win, then I really can't fault you that much, especially when it comes to your offensive performance. Um, I think that's enough said about the Kansas City game. Let's move on to the next primetime game, which was the NFL's first game in South America, in that of the Green Bay Packers versus uh, the Philadelphia Eagles in Brazil. And the first thing I have to say about this whole thing is I bet the Giants are salty right now that they gave up Saquon Barkley 3 rushing touchdowns. He ran over the Green Bay defense, which it ended up being a pretty good game. Um, really up until the end where the Packers did that boneheaded thing and they kind of let Jordan Love take that throw and he ended up getting a MCL injury, which will probably keep him sidelined to between like 4 and 6 weeks, which is a really rough start to the season. But really, the only thing I think I want to say about the game is, dude, Saquon Barkley has not uh he's not lost his efficiency despite his age, despite all these things that we say about running backs not being worth draft picks. This guy consistently produces, and when you have an offensive line as good as uh the Eagles, even with the loss of Jason Kelsey, I think that it's natural that he's going to be as good as he is.
Yeah, I mean, it did take the Eagles a little bit to get into their flow, and Saquon helped with that. But their offense looked good. I mean, they had a lot of problems at the end of the year, mainly with Jalen Hurts, and I thought he played a decent game.
He had
He
a couple
did get strip
turnovers.
sacks
Yeah,
and an interception, but like I said, everyone had these like didn't have like there wasn't that many people that had a great week one. Like, oh my gosh, other than two kickers.
yeah,
Um, but I think they look if they can keep improving like every week, they could be a threat. They just need to stay consistent. They can't start 10-1 and then fall apart again because obviously they missed the playoffs. Well, no, they didn't miss the playoffs. They lost in the wild
they were.
card because of
Yeah,
it. But like I think the everyone's talking about Jordan Love, which is a big thing, and I don't. It's looking like the Packers are going to ride it out with Malik Willis. I don't know how that goes. But I I think that is a thing. Josh Jacobs did take a bit to get settled in, unlike Barkley. But Jaden Reed is a playmaker. I think he may be their best weapon on the outside. Because Christian Watson has had a lot of the talk. That was mainly with Rodgers there of his late push, I believe, in the 22 season. I think he had some injuries and had an okay year last year, but Jaden Reed looked really good.
yeah, they're solid. Watson did end up having a touchdown, but I think you're right. Jaden Reed he was the one who was very clearly taking up the lion's share of targets. And to your point about Jacobs, I think you're right. I don't know why it took so long for him to get moving, but he did end up getting it put together, especially on those final drives by Green Bay. But ultimately, I thought it was a pretty good game. I mean, you can't be mad if you're a Brazilian football fan being able to see this. So I would certainly be mad if I was uh Germany when we're sending over the Giants and the Panthers to play in like the next coming weeks. I don't know if it's coming up pretty soon. Um, so dude,
Yeah.
let me get your lawsuits ready, German citizens, for emotional distress.
I don't think they should go back to Brazil because that field was awful.
Yeah, the
And it
field was
took them
really
like
bad.
3 months to get everything over there, a cargo plane and stuff. It's just like it's not even worth it. Like I get that you're trying to expand your fan base, but I feel like you're doing the same thing if you're just going to Mexico, and that's a lot easier to get to. So I think I don't think you should go back to Brazil, but the NFL obviously has a lot of money and they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But
Um,
moving on to a very strange game. I put this in here because of how strange it was. The Bears were down 17-0 and they won, came back from that 17-0 to be, I believe it was still 24-17. I could be wrong. I don't remember the final score, but the offense did not score a touchdown. They had a blocked punt for return for a touchdown. And then they had 3 field goals, so that makes it 16. And then they had the pick six with the 2 point conversion to get them to 24. And I think the most hilarious NFL picture was ever created with Will Levis on his knees and his head on top of the head. But like, there's a lot of like, if the Titans coach said this, if they put it on first down, first and 10 every play, they would have won. And I thought it was interesting. So we had a lot of expectations with the Bears. I mean, they were on Hard Knocks. They had all these new weapons, and I mean, they sure didn't deliver.
mhm.
Our, and that could be a week one thing. Caleb Williams, his first game, like everyone's gonna have games like that. So I want to see how they bounce back this week. But I mean, they got the win. A win is a win. You got to be happy with that, and you can only get better from here offensively. Yeah, I don't think you get much worse than what they did. And their defense is playing really good. So give credit to them. The Titans started off strong. The turnovers bit them late.
I was gonna say that it could get worse. You could look like the Cleveland Browns, but the Cleveland Browns actually scored 2 touchdowns. So I so I guess it doesn't
Yeah,
get worse. Um, I I think that you're you're right. I mean, if any, I guess if you're looking at the bright side of this, like what an awesome day for the Bears defense, like and special teams. Like this is something that we weren't necessarily sure about. Um, we do know that they do have some talent, but the main focus of the offseason was the offense. And to be able to go out there and still win a game when your offense isn't doing what needs to be done, you have these short drives where you're not scoring any points. And I mean, they were losing for the vast majority of this game. Like your job as a defense is to prevent that lead from getting further. But these guys dug in. Like they they locked together to ensure that this didn't get out of hand. And to be able to force those turnovers, to bring the game home is pretty remarkable. Especially, I thought so we're gonna talk now that I've said all these nice things about the Bears defense. What a scathing like critique of Will Levis to say that if we punted like on first down for close to every drive, we would have won the game. Like, oh my gosh, that's you're basically saying that you as a player have actively contributed to our loss, and you should not have played at all. And when you should, it would have been better if you just did nothing. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, Will Levis did put together some really good games last season, and like I said, this is like and like Braden had said earlier, no one really had a good week one, but some of those boneheaded passes that he was making, especially one where he was falling down, and he tried to do that like shovel pass that ended up being an interception in which he was in despair. You can't make those mistakes, especially when you've nursed the lead for most of the game. So personally, I think that it's pretty bad debut for Will Levis, and I think that there should be a little bit more of a discussion about the way he played that game. Um, but I don't know. Hopefully, he gets it fixed. I'm confident in the coaching staff in Tennessee that they can get that together and that they can build a scheme around him. But yeah, not a fun start to the season.
yeah. I think I don't even think the Titans offense really played that bad until that. Like they played a great first half.
Yeah,
So I mean, I guess they played a really good half of offensive football. It was just the second half where they struggled. which I mean, happen. It's week one. There's going to be mistakes made. There is every time. You just got to be able to build off of that and move forward, not downward.
Hmm.
So if they continue to do that, their division is hard with the Colts and Texans, who did both look pretty good, and the Jaguars as well. So that is a pretty solid division now. So they have some work to do, but they can't they can they can get there if they can get to where they need to be. They can be a threat because they
Hmm.
have the weapons to do so. So I'm interested by that. But I think the game I was the most impressed with was Sunday Night Football, Lions and Rams, because both teams had their moments. The Lions jumped out to, I mean, it was 3-3, and then they scored. They got in late in the half, they got Stafford to throw a pick, and then they scored like right off the jump in the second half, and they started off well. And then the Rams responded right back. The Stafford to Cup connection was deadly, like it was 2 years ago before Cup was getting hurt. So I think this can be a duo, especially with Puka out now. And then they score, and then the Lions come straight in overtime. They abandoned the run game. It felt like the second half. Gibbs wasn't running the ball that well, so they put Montgomery in, and he just ran through everyone,
Hmm.
got them tired, and then just ran through them to win the game in overtime. I thought this was a great game. Showed two high talented teams, high coached teams, and I think two playoff teams by the end of the year.
Yeah, totally. I think that especially when you consider the way that Cup was able to rebound from, I mean, an injured season, so it ended up being kind of mediocre, but what a great rebound, especially to set the tone in the first game. I'm I'm kind of confused as to why the Rams are only allowed to have one like amazing wide receiver at a time. With Puka going out, like it seems like Cooper Cup is just this is going to be the Cooper Cup season, and then next time around, it's probably Puka's going to be able to take that one over again. So, I'm interested to see like how they both interact with each other, or at least how they're schemed up in a season where both of them are healthy. So hopefully Puka's able to come back as soon as possible. I saw indications. I don't know if he was officially put on the injury reserve yet, but there was
Yeah,
uh
he was.
okay, yeah. So McVay had said that he's going on the injury reserve. So that's at least 4 weeks out. So hopefully when he returns there, I'm because I'm excited to see if they are able to get both of those guys working because if they are, man, that could be the best offense in the NFL with Matt Stafford, who is, in my opinion, is like vastly underrated quarterback, probably more underrated at this point than Jared Goff.
He
Like,
has been underrated his whole career.
yeah,
I mean, obviously in Detroit you're gonna be underrated, but I mean, I feel like he had the Super Bowl year and then he was injured for pretty much a whole year. They had like eight quarterbacks or whatever that year, and then
yeah,
he had a great year last year and he started off really well. So I mean, he's been underrated his whole career.
yeah. Well, I'm glad that he's been able to. I mean, it's always going to be like a tense relationship with Detroit. Um, like it's they have a really weird relationship with kind of like the quarterback swap and everything. But I think that ultimately I think that these teams are they who knows, they might see each other again. Um, I'm pretty confident that they will.
Well, the thing is that Detroit's obviously a tough atmosphere to play when the fans are riled up.
Hmm.
But like you would think that for LA, but they have if you really think about it, anytime LA has played a big game, you can even maybe even say this for the Chargers, the away team crowd has been bigger.
Yeah,
Because I don't like when they won the year they won the Super Bowl in 21, uh they played the 49ers in the NFC Championship. They had to restrict it to LA residents only to try to get Rams fans there. So like I was just like thinking if this game, like if just for saying the playoffs that they played at LA, like Detroit could make that interesting as well, even though it is a hike to get over
yeah.
there, but that could be interesting as well.
It's just unfair because like I feel like with the amount of it sucks that they moved to LA when it's difficult for them to gin up like a fan base. I think the Rams do a better job of that this than the Chargers. When you have a vast and pretty rabid fan base in St. Louis, like we see that in like uh, what formerly was the XFL. Um, or what league were the Battlehawks in?
Yeah, they were in the XFL.
Yeah, like the fact that people are turning out to that and to watch that level of football and LA fans can't appreciate the Rams, I think is pretty ridiculous, especially when you have a team like that who is just like about as solid as you can be. Like you have a veteran quarterback who is on who has is surrounded by young talent, but they're still producing. I
I mean,
just
it's entertaining to watch.
it's super entertaining to watch, but I guess I don't know, they're too busy being influencers.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like LA, like, it's not really a football city. If that makes sense. I
But
feel like it's,
California is a great football state, which is weird.
yeah.
Like it just
I
doesn't
just feel
make
like, yeah, they don't get the turnout in LA. It's more like basketball, I feel like is their thing.
yeah, I think that's fair to say.
But let's get into some games of this week. We start off Thursday night, AFC East rivalry. Bills traveling down to Miami. The thing that I think with this game is that the Dolphins have a very high-paced offense, and they have not been able to solve the puzzle of the Buffalo Bills. In the last couple years, the only win that I can think them having was the one when everyone thought Tua got a concussion and they won like 9-10.
Hmm.
And every other time they have lost, and it's been a low-scoring game. The Bills' defense have contained the receivers, and they slowed the game down and played their ball. And I just because of that, I think it's going to happen again. I need to see Mike uh McDonald to change my mind for me to pick the Dolphins in a game like this. So I think the Bills win. I think they slow down the pace. It's not as high scoring as everyone thinks, and they win by a possession.
Personally, I think I'm actually gonna take the Dolphins here in this one. They have you at home, and I thought that the performance that they put up against um the Jaguars was actually pretty impressive against a uh to be honest a really like the offense for the Jaguars was kind of impressive, which I don't know. I especially that touchdown from Trevor Lawrence to Brian Thomas Jr. That was ridiculous. And although I have my qualms with Tua, and I think that it's very clear who the better quarterback is in this game. I think when the Bills let up that many points to the Cardinals in the previous game, I don't know. I don't necessarily trust them to be able to stay in pace like against the Dolphins, who have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who both were pretty electric. Your point though about McDonald potentially getting outcoached is a valid one, though. I can see that happening. I just think that when we're looking at where these guys are coming from over the past two games, um, I would rather be the Dolphins right now, especially when you have it at home.
Yeah. I mean the Bills have a lot of new faces on defense, so that is a great point. I just think like when Mike McDonald his game plan doesn't go to plan, he panics, and I need to see him to be able to change
Yeah,
before I pick him. That's pretty much it.
that makes sense.
Yeah, but now let's move to the 1 o'clock slate Sunday. There's no Friday game this week as I mean, there usually isn't. We'll start off with Seahawks and Patriots, and the Patriots surprised the whole country. They beat the Bengals, which I'm not happy about, but I'll save that for the Bengals. They looked good. They dominated the line of scrimmage with their run game. Ramondre Stevenson had a great game. Jacoby Brissett didn't make any mistakes. I don't think he turned the ball over once. And their defense were able to contain one of the best offenses the past couple years. Now, the Seahawks are a lot better defensively than the Bengals, so I think they will be able to contain that. It's just I think it's whoever wins the turnover battle because Gino and Jacoby, you can compare them a little bit, and they both have great run games. So I think just Gino is has played better the last couple years. He has more experience than Jacoby has. Jacoby just hasn't really been on the field as much as Gino, because Gino's been a starter for the last 2 years. So I am going to pick the Seahawks, but this is going to be a defensive battle between two defensive coaches.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with you on this one. I think that Mike McDonald is quite an improvement, especially when it comes to the Seahawks defense. Um, I think it's going to be hard to score points on this one, especially for the Patriots, who have an O line who I think have life insurance policies taken out on Jacoby Brissett's name,
I mean, they
because
looked good on Sunday.
yeah, that's the thing. It's like I want, like, for your sake, I want you to have a good defense because it's a lot of fun to have one, but your defense is really bad, like not good. And I will admit my faults too. The Bengals didn't really make the moves that they needed to make to fix that. Now, as you get further into the season, it may be Joe Burrow uh and T and Jamar settle into that to where maybe that's not as big of an issue, or maybe you can make some acquisitions before the end of the trade deadline. But it's like there's definite need for improvement there. Um, and the one thing that I think might be, I think you're completely right about Gino as well. Like, Gino is he's not a top 10 quarterback. He's definitely outside of it. But I think that in terms of who I would rather have, and who I think is better equipped for the situation, especially when it comes to the receiving talent and the offensive line, I think you got to pick Gino. The one thing I guess you could watch is uh, Kenneth Walker is out for this, or he's questionable. So I don't if he doesn't play, I can definitely see the Seahawks struggling to move it on the ground against a very veritable defense in that of the New England Patriots. Christian Gonzalez looks is continuing to look really amazing coming off of, I'm pretty sure, it's an ACL injury. So it doesn't necessarily look like this Patriots defense is going away anytime soon. And I can see them keeping this close. Um, but I do think the Seahawks will win this. Even away at Foxborough. The one thing I will say is I'm really, really happy with the way that Jacoby Brissett looks. Uh, I have a soft spot for him, and I like that he was able to come back home and um got the starting job, even if it's just a bridge quarterback position. Um, the one thing I'm a little bit worried about is, like, there were a couple of hits he took when he was playing against the Bengals, um, where he looked pretty banged up, and I wouldn't be surprised if that potentially happens again, and you could see some Drake May action in this game, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I was shocked by how they played, and I'm just interested to see how they keep it going.
Hmm.
And because I mean, they lost Bill Belichick, who's arguably the greatest coach of all time. So like, I thought there would be more of a gap, but I mean, they looked right on beat. But moving up next to one of the game that a 100% America is picked in one way favor, and that is Chargers versus Panthers. And one, the Chargers looked pretty solid. Their defense looked good. They balanced their run and passing attack because I mean the Chargers are lacking the wide receiver star power that they've had the last couple years. Their wide receiver one's Quentin Johnson, and we've all seen how he's looked in training camp. He didn't have the like he had a decent game, but J.K. Dobbins went off. He had 140 yards, one touchdown, I think, and these Panthers, they look like the worst team in the NFL again. I mean, they were down 17-0 literally like within 5 minutes to the Saints. And that was I thought they'd be improved with some of the moves they made. They had pretty decent moves in the offseason, even though they didn't have their first round pick because they got kidnapped for it, pretty much. But they look awful again, and tickets are like less than $2 again. Who knows how many fans are gonna be there? I got the Chargers.
Yeah, I also have the Chargers. We talked prior to last week about, or I guess this former weekend, about how the Chargers, I think we said we could play wide receiver for the Chargers. Like, the depth is not there. The depth doesn't even exist whatsoever. It's a kiddie pool. Um, but I guess I didn't consider, like, hey, if you bring in Jim Harbaugh, he's gonna make your running back look good, even if it's J.K. Dobbins, who has a history of injuries, um, and is kind of getting up there in terms of how long he's been in the NFL. And you're aged by your injuries, but the fact that he was able to make him look great, and allow the Chargers to lean on the run, which is not something that they've been able to do really since Austin Eckler. And he wasn't, it almost like he wasn't even like a running back. He was the best definition of a receiving back you could possibly put upon a person. I think that we're seeing the immediate impact of Jim Harbaugh, and good for the Chargers. They're going to beat the Panthers this weekend. It's like that's it. I mean, it doesn't get. They also some of the moves that they've made, in terms of their recruiting, I thought have been great. Joe Alt put up a good showing. I think he's going to continue to put up a good showing. I think Harbaugh uh, knows how to scheme around guys like that. I mean, he coached an incredible offensive line at Michigan, so he knows for the guys to look out for. He knows how to get a running back moving. And if the Chargers do end up leaning on this, like, and this is their new identity, I think that that's something that, like, maybe what everyone is saying about the Chargers is true. Like, maybe that's the way that they actually become what they're supposed to become. My assumption was that they were gonna keep their scheme, that they were going to continue throwing it. Um, with the superstar quarterback that you have in Justin Herbert, but like maybe that's not necessary. Maybe you can stack up those wins, make a couple acquisitions, and then you can start to open it up a little bit. But it makes sense as of right now just to lean on what you got.
Yeah, I mean, Dobbins looked great. I think that's probably one of his best games that he's played in the NFL because his career
Yeah,
has been very limited.
yeah.
So I think the story is can Dobbins stay healthy?
Hmm. Let's move on to our next game, which is 49ers versus Vikings. I was impressed by the way that Sam Darnold looked, especially in that first half. Granted, it was against the Giants. It's we didn't necessarily see the interceptions that Sam Darnold had been known for. I guess what was associated with him, and he was able to get Justin Jefferson moving, which was the main question that we had uh, about this team really as a whole. But I'm happy to say that Sam Darnold was at least doing the job in in JJ McCarthy's stead. That's not going to be enough for this week though. We saw it with the 49ers. It's the Jets who have a probably like a top like three defense. I'd give it like if not like two. Um, I just think that the amount of points that these guys are going to score is not going to be possible for Sam Darnold to keep up with. Um, I also I don't know how, like, when you have an offensive line as good as the 49ers and a defensive scheme as blitz heavy as Brian Flores likes to run, I think that that can really come back to bite them. And I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers put up like 35 points against this team and they can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean the 49ers look dominant. I don't think McCaffrey's going to play though. That's what I've seen so far is that it's not likely that he plays. But we're going to find out if the Vikings offense is good and that like Sam Darnold is serviceable for the year, or if the Giants were just that bad. I think we're gonna find out in this game because I mean, well, probably not this game. We'll find that in a couple weeks because this is a really tough test. The 49ers are probably the best. They looked the best in the NFL in week one. So, and I do agree with you. I think they will win this game. I don't think they'll choke up like they did in Minnesota a year ago. I think they'll be just fine. I think they win. I feel like this game can be close though. It very well could be, especially if because the one bad thing that the 49ers did is that they had to settle for a lot of field goals. They were able to move the ball, but they couldn't get it in the end zone. So we'll see how that changes week to week, but I do think the 49ers win, and I think it could be closer than people think though.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from on that. I mean, if you get the ball to Justin Jefferson, he's going to do whatever he wants. I just wonder if he's going to be able to get to that point with like the way that this 49ers defense still looks.
Yeah.
Um, Next game we have is a gross one. In that of Giants versus Commanders, we have Daniel Jones leading the offense, who is currently in the sweepstakes with a couple of other quarterbacks for worst quarterback in the NFL. You're also coming up on Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, who didn't have an awful week. They didn't end up winning. However, they put up a decent performance in their most recent game. a nice debut for Jane Daniels. He was able to show off some of his rushing talent without getting cracked too many times. So Braden, what do you have going into this game?
Well, the Commanders, their offense didn't look bad, but their defense got torched. I mean, the but the Buccaneers opened up that game and were basically to do whatever they be able to do whatever they want offensively. And the Giants, on the other hand, looked awful. I think they didn't look as bad as the Panthers, but I mean, it was close. Daniel Jones, since his big contract, has thrown more pick sixes than touchdowns. So I'm interested to see how that looks going forward because I don't. If he plays like this, he definitely won't have a job there next year. So I have the Commanders winning because I don't trust Daniel Jones, but their defense needs to step it up compared to what they did last week. So I have the Commanders winning a not entertaining game.
Yeah, I want to root for the Giants almost because from what I saw from I mean, do we really think Daniel Jones is that bad? Like, it's possible that he is, like, but I mean, he has a strong build and he can run. Like, I think that it's possible that he's able to get things moving. Um, but I also know what I know about the Commanders defense, like you said, is that they probably are the most DB poor team in the league, and so I can see them getting uh I can see them getting torched as well. So I I I I, I know I just said positive things about the Giants, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to get it done, especially when you're traveling to the Commanders. Uh, I think Jaden Daniels puts up a pretty decent game. I'm hoping that the defense is going to be able to honor him or at least keep them in this game so Jaden doesn't have to do too much. But yeah, give me the Commanders as well in this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a winnable game for the Giants.
Yeah,
Now, not very high percentage, but it's winnable. There's going to be a lot of games that aren't winnable this year with their quarterback play, so they have a shot. And at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for.
yeah.
But going next game is if you would have looked at this last Saturday before the NFL season, you thought this could not be like not that anticipated game, but both these teams looked great. Now, one was against the Panthers, the worst team in the league. Excuse me. And then one was against the Browns where they picked apart that defense. I think Cowboys Saints is a very interesting game. It is in Dallas, so I'm gonna give. But I mean, I feel like AT&T, everyone wins there. It's not that hostile of an environment, or like not, maybe a hostile environment, but it's not a tough place to play. People win there all the time. But I do think Cowboys get it done. I was really impressed with what they did. Now, half of that was they weren't going against a capable quarterback, which I imagine we'll talk about in a little bit, but I think they looked pretty solid. They started week one last year good too with that huge victory against the Giants. I think they bounce, come back, do the same thing. This game is closer than I thought it was going to be, just because of how both teams looked. And maybe the Saints can put some points on the board, but I think the Cowboys do win this one eventually, like down the stretch.
Um, I think two things can be good at once. I think Deshaun Watson is an awful quarterback, and I also think that Dallas is an amazing defense. Like, and is Mike Zimmer has those boys cooking. Like, I think that it's going to be a very clear or very like rapid punch in the face when you just played the Panthers and then you have to go against Dallas at home. I don't I don't like you can't really ask for a bigger contrast than that. So I think that Dallas they're probably going their offense is probably going to be a little bit better this game. I think we can expect a little bit more out of them, and I think their defense is just going to be just as dominant. Um, Derek Carr, he's still a good quarterback, like, but he's not. I don't think he's capable of picking apart this defense. I just don't think that's possible. I from what we've seen prior to the season and then what we've seen with the small sample size that we have of this season, I think that this Dallas team is probably contending, um, at least as of right now, is the best defense in the league. And I think that if we don't consider that when we call this game, I think that it's to our own loss. Um, Micah Parsons was elite. Basically got pressures on, like, I think this week they had like upwards of like 30 pressures. So I'm gonna go ahead and it could have been like mid 20s, but I don't know. I think I'm gonna give this one to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think that yeah, this is gonna be a wake up game for the Saints because they had it really easy last week. But I do think they will play well. I don't think they'll like get. I mean, they could get blown out. I That's definitely a possibility, but I think I have more faith in them to not get blown out. So I think it could be an interesting game, but I think the Cowboys, I agree, their defense is just going to be too much.
Yeah.
And moving on to what if Jordan Love wasn't hurt, I would be looking forward to this game. Two young quarterbacks going at it. Colts versus Packers. It's in Lambeau, and so that's going to be in a hard for the Colts play, but Malik Willis, I don't think is going to do well. And the LaFleur training wheels system didn't really win them games last year. I think that the Colts looked good. Adonai Mitchell for the Colts could have had 350 yards last week, but he had two because AR kept overthrowing him. So I think they eventually will get that down. That may not be this week. That may not be this week, but I do have faith in this Colts offense, and I think if they score 21, 28 points, they win the game. There's no way Malik Willis is scoring that many points with this Packers team, unless if Josh Jacobs like takes cocaine before this game and runs for 450 yards. The Colts won this one. I think this is one of the easiest picks of the week for me.
Yeah, me as well. I I think it's gonna be the Colts. It's pretty clear. I'm huge on Anthony Richardson. That throw he had against the Texans made me sit up from out of my chair and text like nearly everybody I knew. Like it was like witnessing like water turning into wine. Like it was ridiculous.
His feet were like not set
Yeah,
either. He
not
was
set.
just running. Oh shoot, someone's open.
Yeah. If you tame that dragon, like the dragon being like his arm and his skills, you have an like Cam Newton 2, like and potentially better. Like we're not and I'm not being I don't think I'm being like overreacting. What we saw yesterday, there were a lot of rough edges. But theoretically, we're not saying that this is a possibility necessarily. But if there's a possibility in which you can tame that, you can make him a little bit more accurate, allow him to probably make better reads instead of having to take off on every play. I think that you have something really, really special, Anthony Richardson. And even though you're going to Lambeau, it's like I think it might be a little bit harder if it's a night game. But I'm personally I'm taking the Colts on this one, and they're not slouches either. Like they have a really good defense as well. Um, it's going to be hard for Malik Willis to move the ball. And I think they're probably going to have to rely on Josh Jacobs a lot, who is also not a slouch, but I don't think that that's going to win you the game. And I think your point, like, yeah, they're definitely not winning. I would be surprised if it was over 21 points for the Packers.
Yeah, I mean Willis can prove me wrong, but I haven't seen anything from his NFL career to make me pick the Packers in this game.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give the I'm gonna let you talk about this one first because this is your team. The Browns going to Jacksonville. It's the playoff matchup that could have been last year. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm still mad at them for ducking us. But that's another that's something for another time. I think if anyone else starts a quarterback, we win this game. And that includes Dorian Thompson Robinson. That's it. But I think strictly because of the way well, not even the way our offensive line looks. I think they're good enough. Like our tackles, they really have to get these penalties figured out because I think on nearly every single drive that we especially in the first half where the Browns were starting at between first and 15, first and 20. And that's really hard to come um against or come back from, especially when you don't have Nick Chubb to help mitigate some of those. He's not Jerome Ford just can't chalk people like Nick Chubb can. That's just the fact of the matter. But if Deshaun Watson starts, like it's clear that his confidence is cooked. It's clear he's bailing before he goes through like a solid set of reads. Like I think that I think you cannot be an NFL quarterback at this point with what he has. I don't know. I'm not even gonna talk about like whatever was coming out of camp, like where they were saying like, oh, he's throwing the best he's ever looked. Like Ken Dorsey coming out and saying like this is the best that the offense is gonna like. You're gonna be wowed. I'm not even gonna start touch on that because I think that it's like just from inside the house. Of course, you're gonna say whatever, but I think he's a completely unstartable. I think that if you gave Dorian Thompson Robinson first team reps, I think that he would literally win this game. I'm not I'm being so serious right now. If he can win against the Steelers, like I think that he can totally win against the Jaguars. Like and granted the Jaguars I guess I'll speak on them now. The Jaguars defense looked like really good. Like you were able to stop Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill for most of that game. Josh Allen looked really solid. Um, I think that these guys are gonna be a little bit easier to go against. But what else does that get you? Like maybe four first downs and a half? We had one. Like come on, like it's absolutely ridiculous to insinuate that like I don't know that you can start this dude. Um, the one thing I will say about the team is like the Browns defense is still electric. Like they're still amazing. And a lot of people do like seem to be overlooking that when they're putting out these team rankings and everything. Like we do still at this point have like a top three defense. Like it is that good. But that doesn't matter if they are constantly on the field. So we need to put something together. We need to make a decision at that quarterback's position, and we need to make it fast.
Yeah, we're gonna find out if this is just a huge week one overreaction or if Deshaun Watson really has just digressed that much. And I mean, I have not been impressed with his stint in Cleveland. He's had one good half, and that was his last game last year.
Yeah,
So
and then he got
and
injured, which is
eh,
like you can't put every injury on somebody like that's out of their control. But like the fact of the matter is like when you look at the stats and you see you didn't play like he only played 4 games that season. Like when you're looking at what he was able to produce, it wasn't that much. Like sorry, you got injured. Like it's it's out of your control, but like you need to be like your health is something that you have to be able to market as a player.
yeah, and I mean, I think he's the first quarterback. He went 0 for 10 on throws over 15 yards, and none of them were really close. The ones that were close were into double coverage because they were close on target, but the receiver was covered. All the people that were open weren't close on target, and then he'd throw an on-target ball, but there would be three defenders standing there. So he needs he needs to improve drastically for you guys to have a chance to do anything this year, or you need to move down the line to Jameis. I thought the Jags looked really impressive. Trevor Lawrence looked pretty good. Their offense had a slow start. They turned ETN had a fumble. I'm not sure if Lawrence threw a pick or not. I think the Jags win this game because I don't think Deshaun does anything that great. I don't, and I can't pick the Browns when you have him trotting on the field every drive, so I have the Jags.
But do you like, and I'm not gonna be mad if you don't, like, do you think that we could win this game if we had Jameson?
I think you can. I don't think you would. I think you're underestimating the Jags a little bit, but I think you'd have a from if what so I think you should at least put Watson out there, see how he does, and then you should be able, like, plan to have Jameis play as well. Because we talked about the Cowboys defense, they could just be that good. Now the chances of that, not that likely. Because I mean, he was like half the throws he was missing wasn't because of the Cowboys defense. But when you have the constant thought of Micah Parsons lining up against you and all everyone else they have, I mean, it has to play with your head. Yes, they have Josh Allen, but that's nowhere near the threat of Micah Parsons in. So I think you need to give this guy another chance. Now, if he comes out and does what he did last week, then you start to have some serious questions and like serious make some moves that need to be done. But I think you give him a chance this week and see if he can improve it all. Jim Harbaugh said it best. You make your biggest changes from week 1 to week 2. So we'll see how it goes for this Browns team, but I do think the Jags win this one.
All right, moving us on to our next game. Well, I just think like it's true. Like I think you're right. Like the Jags do have like a veritable defense, but like so do the Browns. And I think that literally better placement on like 4 or 5 of those catches, like not even 4 or 5, like just it would probably more than that. Like literally put us in field goal position like a couple more times, get sustained drives where the defense can catch their breath, drink some Gatorade like for half of a second. Like I think we could have won that Cowboys game. But like they were on the field and off the field with what seemed like 30 seconds. And
I don't know about win that Cowboys game. You're gonna make it closer.
well, like it's if you watch the game, like you could see very clearly like that we were gassed. Like like that defense was completely gassed by like the fourth, like third and out. So I think we could have won it with Jameis. Like I genuinely think that like we had separation too. It's not like these guys were completely covered and blanketed the entire time. Deshaun would look for 2 seconds and scramble out of the pocket and then check it down to somebody. And the 15, like sorry, the what were the stat you said? Like Owen,
He was 0 for 10 on throws
yeah,
15 yards or longer down the field.
yeah, 0 for 10 for for passes 15 yards or more down the field. Half of those were I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. Like a third of those 30 yards above Jerry Judy's head, 30 yards above Amari Cooper's head. Like I don't know what he's thinking. I don't even know if he was actually trying to hit those people. If he told me that he wasn't, I would believe him. But I just the quarterback play in Cleveland at this point is the most incompetent I have ever seen, maybe aside from Bryce Young. Like I think I'd rather have Daniel Jones at this point, and I'm so serious.
Yeah. I
So I
mean,
at least with Daniel Jones, you have like a stronger build, a better upside. Like, and there were people talking last season about trading Deshaun Watson to Daniel Jones for Daniel Jones, and they were like lighting that guy on fire. And at this point, I'm so serious. I would rather have him. Like at this, I hope he's gone actually by tomorrow. I hope Deshaun Watson is not on my team tomorrow, but that won't be the case. So it's just maybe
interesting.
maybe I'll wake up and he's gone. Like this will whole be a dream and I'm in a simulation. Anyway, moving on to the next game. That wasn't drawn on at all. Jets versus Titans. Uh, I think this is a Jets get back game. I think that the Titans have a lot to answer for, so they might try and keep it close. I think that Will Levis is going to really struggle against the secondary, though. These guys are dogs. You don't want to get on the bad side of Sauce Gardner. And if you are having trouble against the Bears defense, who I think are kind of like a Jets defense light, you have some real great DBs in Chicago. Um, I think that it's not going to get any better, but I think that they will try and do better. I think Tony Pollard has shown some upside in a way that I think that he struggled with last season. Um, so maybe you can get things moving with him. I think that he's actually no, I don't think anyone was ever saying he's a bad running back, but I think people actually might be underestimating him and the capabilities he has behind this Tennessee offensive line. But I think Will Levis is really going to struggle. So despite that struggling, I think it'll be a close game. But I do have the Jets winning this as a get back after the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets last night got absolutely killed. They got killed in between the tackles, and that may be the thing the Titans attack is in between the tackles because they're missing Hassan Reddick with him holding out, the only player still. And I think it's crazy because how much money he's getting fined that you're willing to do that. But we can't like overreact about the Jets because they played what looked like the best team in the league.
Yeah.
So, and Aaron Rodgers looked decent. I think it definitely took him a minute to get adjusted because I mean, after what happened last year, it's going to take everyone. Like if that happened to anyone, it would take them a second to get used to. But I do agree. I think the Jets will win. I think if Will Levis minimizes his mistakes, they have a chance. They just can't turn the ball over and give Aaron Rodgers extra possessions because we know how great he can be. But I do think the Jets win this one. I think this one can be close. I think the Titans can make this one competitive.
Yeah, I can see it being competitive, but like, dude, Will Levis, you better get back. Like, you cannot do what you did. I mean, that's pretty easily coachable out of like, hey, Will, next time as you're falling down, don't throw it directly to a to a DB who's blitzing. Just take the sack. Um, and I think that's pretty easy to coach out of. But like, I don't know. I think that the Jets are going to be able to put it together. I mean, with the receiving talent that they have, I don't think Lazard is a slouch. I think he had a touchdown last night. I think that when you have put him and Garrett Wilson up, I think that they're going to be able to build on what they have and what was Aaron Rodgers' first game back.
Yeah. Now this next matchup is very ironic, just because the Lions they started in the playoffs with Lions and then Buccaneers both at home, and it's the same thing to start off the year this year. They have the Buccaneers at home, and both of these teams were really impressive week one. The Bucks were able to they looked great offensively. They got everyone involved. They got Mike Evans. They got uh Chris Godwin. They got Rashad White open in the pass game, and Bucky Irving looked great in the run game. And Baker had a great game as well. I don't think he turned the ball over. And their defense was able to hold um the Commanders defense our offense down, excuse me. But I think the Lions will win this game because I think if they get this run game going like they did that overtime drive looked and how they did in the first half, if they're able to mix the pass and run game like they usually do, they are a hard team to stop. Jarrett Collinsworth had a great point out. Jared Goff over the middle of the field is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league. He struggles when it's deep and to the outside, but down the middle, that's usually where he doesn't make his mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think the Lions win this one, but this one I think it's very similar to the Rams Lions game where it's one team throws some haymakers, then the other team responds, and then I think the Lions just have the experience and the coaching to get squeeze this one out in a very close competitive game again.
Yeah, I think this is one of the games that you kind of look at and you kind of tend to think that there could be like some sneakiness in there, especially with the way that Baker's been playing. But I don't really think we should overthink it. Uh, the Lions have been absolutely dominant, really over the past like however many games they've played. Like even the playoff run that they have was amazing. Um, Personally, I'm just gonna pick the Lions, and really that's all I have to say about it. I think that there's a clear better team here, but I see like the reason for there to be like some like from like dawdling and like who knows there might be able to like if we have like a particularly turnover heavy day, like the Buccaneers could definitely steal it. But I think that I'm confident in the Lions enough to where they're not even going to entertain that idea. So give me the Lions.
Moving on to Raiders Ravens to finish out the 1 o'clock slate. I think the Ravens. Well, the Raiders, I wasn't very impressed with them. I said the quarterback play wasn't going to be as good, and I don't really think it was. Max Crosby struggled to get past Joe Alt. Their run game, you could definitely tell they're missing Jacobs. I just think the Ravens will be able to bounce back and getting that experience at Arrowhead. Them having a little more time to get the offensive line right, and try to figure out a game plan for that. I think they'll win this one, and I think they'll do it pretty convincingly as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I don't think there's much to say about this one. Um, I do hope for Antonio Pierce's sake that they're able to get the running game fixed. I'm happy with the pick for Gardner Minshew as the quarterback. And to see Devonte Smith like actually, I don't know, have a productive game, it was exciting. Um, but I think that it's pretty clear like this is the get backest game of the get back of get backest games of games. So I think the Ravens are going to go in there and mop the floor.
Yep. All right, we close out the 1 o'clock slate. We're moving to there's 4 games, or no, 3 games in the 4 o'clock slate this week. I think 2 of them are very interesting. The last one I'm not too high hoped on. I think Rams Cardinals start off. The Cardinals, I think what like it was just week 1 that bit them. Kyler had Marvin Harrison Jr. on the last play wide open, and he threw it into pretty much double coverage. Um, Rams, we talked about, they looked really impressive. I don't think the Cardinals will be able to stop Cooper Kupp and Stafford, their connection. I talked a lot about Blake Corum and Kyron Williams, and they seem to mitigate that problem by not playing Blake Corum at all. I thought that was very interesting because they drafted him in the 3rd round, and that's like high for a running back not to play him at all. So I'm interested to see if that was just a week 1 thing. Maybe he was battling something, or if that's just how they're gonna play it and just give Kyron Williams all the carries because he played great. It's not like he played bad. I just thought they would mix it a little bit more. But I don't think the Cardinals are there just yet. I think this year they'll play really well, but they won't get as many wins and they'll start to trend upward maybe in the next couple of years. I think the Rams are where they need to be. I think they showed that they just didn't get the job done, and I think the Rams won this one.
Yeah, one thing I have to say about the Cardinals is for the love of everything good, please throw it to Marvin Harrison Jr., man. It's not just because he's on my fantasy team. Like I what I have seen from him is enough to win games. Like that's why you drafted him. That that's why you drafted him. One reception is ridiculous, especially when you have him completely like wide open on a potentially game-winning draw or on a game-winning. Was it a tying or who knows?
I think it was they were down 7.
Yeah, on a game tying, game winning, whatever you want to call it, drive. Like Kyler has to do whatever he can to instead of putting his head down and rushing forward, which like he's so inclined to doing, he can stay mobile, but recognize that you have weapons. I was happy with how they used Greg Dortch. And it almost seems like that's going to be the better receiver or like at least the more productive this season based on the way that Kyler plays because Marvin Harrison's going to be running those post routes and Greg Dortch is um I wouldn't be surprised if I see him running more like slants and curls. And then 90 and a lot of he did a great job of getting separation. So I mean, I think Greg Dortch is probably going to be a sleeper pick um, for the most productive wide receiver in Arizona, at least on this first year. But I mean, what they have pales in comparison to what the Rams have, especially like we talked about with the wide receivers. Um, and the rushing, James Conner's very variable. I mean, they were running all over the Bills, but with Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, like it's hard to see where the Cardinals are better than the Rams in any way. So I'm going to take the Rams.
Yeah, they need to get him involved, especially if you're drafting him at 4. You can't, he has to have more than 1 reception,
Yeah,
so I think they will get him the ball more. We, Because I mean that is their first game really playing together because no one plays in the preseason anymore. So we'll see how that goes. I have a lot to say on this next game though.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Bengals Chiefs. Now, before I get to the game, let me start off with the Bengals. One, I am tired of us just dropping the first 2 or 3 games every year. I really am. Like, I don't, what do they do during training camp? Because it's every year they look awful week one. They, Joe Burrow threw like 5 interceptions against the Steelers in 22. Last year, we played the Browns. We couldn't do anything. Um,
Well, that's hard. You guys always struggle at least in one game with the Browns. Like
it,
it probably it kind of happened in that one.
well, but we struggled all
Yeah,
early period
I
of
see what you're
last
saying.
year, and
Yeah.
we let the Patriots, I can't even say the name right, bitch us around, man. Dax Hill missed 8,000 tackles on Ramondre Stevenson, and I'm a huge fan of Dax Hill because he went to Michigan, but he got cooked. Our D line sucked. I mean, we didn't make any moves when we lost defensive tackles, and we lost BJ Hill. DJ Reader went down at one point in this game, and we couldn't stop the run. Ramondre Stevenson basically willed himself to the first down in the final 2 minutes. And then when they passed, our edges would get there, force Jacoby to move, and our defensive tackles would be non-existent, and he would run for 6 or 7 yards.
Which
And
is
that dude
crazy.
is slow.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
like that brother has never been a runner, and we
yeah.
are letting him look like I don't even know, but it was just so annoying to watch.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, often our offense didn't look great. We kept doing this thing where we could pass, but then we would run on first and second down, get 2 yards, and then we would throw a 3 yard check down, or have our back throw to our backup tight end into the red zone and have him fumble at the goal line. It's just like we're making these mistakes every year, and I'm tired of it. And there's no way we win this game. The Chiefs looked great their first week, and they're going to look great this week. The Bengals are going to play better. They're still going to get pooped on, and we're going to lose by like 14 or 14 to 21 points. I don't think we play this one close at all because uh, Higgins is probably going to be out. Jamar Chase hasn't practiced. He has this week, but like we have looked awful at the beginning of the season, and we can't afford to lose games like this, especially how close the playoff race was last year. We can't afford to drop to a game to the Patriots because I know we're better than the Patriots, and we're not better than the Chiefs. So I don't. And it's at Arrowhead. We're not winning this game.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I mean, this will be a really fun game later in the season. Like, and well, if you guys make the playoffs, like I think this will be a really good game. Like once you guys get it figured out, and once you, I mean, you have to like make some sort of change. Like it I mean, what like who could you trade for? And I mean, you can. We have a
Anyone,
couple. We have a couple of defensive
anyone.
tackles you can have if you want. Like like I, some of our bench players are better than this defensive tackle, like this line that you have.
Trey Henderson and Sam Hubbard are great, but
Yeah,
the
they're great.
inside and our linebackers are solid. They're not the best in the world, but together they play well. And our secondary was the bad point last year. They looked improved pass coverage wise, but I mentioned that Dax Hill couldn't tackle for his life, and you
Yeah.
can't afford to do that with the speedsters the Chiefs have. So
Um, yeah, I think you're right. I think the Chiefs do win this game. It's even harder than when you're at Arrowhead. So hopefully you guys get another shot to get your lick back in the playoffs. But yeah, I don't see this going well for you.
yeah, I don't really want to talk about it anymore. So let's move to the Steelers Broncos, and I have one player that is going to win this game for the Steelers, and his name is TJ Watt. Um, because Bo Nix struggled last week, which I don't think we all thought he was going to have the greatest debut ever. He has a chance to get to where he needs to be, but it's definitely not in this game. With how TJ Watt played last week, he single-handedly beat him and Chris Boswell beat the Falcons. And Chris Boswell looks like he's going to be punting now because their punter is out for the year. So I think that, I mean, it looks like Fields is going to start. That's what it's looking like. Um, so I'm interested to see what happens, but I think the Steelers win in like a 12-10 game again.
which sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks, man. Like
I don't know,
the
like
Steelers potentially
I don't
could.
know how sorry, I'm interrupting
No,
you.
you
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, please.
I don't know how Steelers fans watch their team.
Yeah.
That's that's all I had to say.
Yeah, it's just, man, I don't trust Bo Nix to get it done at all. Like my hope is that, oh my gosh, like maybe the defense can come up and be a little bit better. Like I I'm trying to find ways that they could potentially lose this game and I just don't see it. Like Bo Nix is gonna get eaten alive. Like Javante is not gonna be able to run at all. And like Cortland Sutton's probably gonna get clamped. Like they are gonna get mopped. So it looks like Justin Fields is going to be starting again, which is great because he played great. And all I have to say is I would pay him $1 billion to leave the Steelers and come to my team.
Yeah,
Um, Sunday night could be a good game.
could be.
Bears versus Texans. I think you're obviously going to think that the Texans are clear favorites in this game. I mean, they have a really solid defense, and then CJ Stroud is just absolutely amazing as well. He had some throws this week that were just kind of like, dude, you can't be serious as well. Like that shouldn't be allowed. Like that, especially that one. I don't know if you saw the one where he like fully fell over and was able to just like get a
Off his
right to,
knees.
yeah, off his knees right to the receiver. It's like, okay, that's unfair. That needs to be patched out or something. But so I think just by him alone and like the defense is, they started out pretty bad like last season. Um, but they got it together. They got it together for the playoffs and they were able to be really productive. Um, but I don't think like this is a difficult situation for Caleb Williams to dive right into. So unless we're gonna see like a situation where this is the game in which he debuts and he's able to put some of the stuff together that he wasn't against the Titans, which I think is possible. Um, I think it's gonna be a pretty clear Texans win. I can see the defense potentially keeping it like kind of frisky and entertaining. But I'm never gonna get bet against CJ Stroud, especially when the Bears are coming off a losing season.
Yeah, we know the Texans are going to score points. This is really how well can the Bears offense play. And I think they bounce. I mean, they have to have a better week than they did last week. I don't think it's enough because especially the Texans were running the football. They didn't do that last year.
Yeah.
For how good Stroud was, they did not run the ball, and Joe Mixon like made the Bengals look awful for getting rid of him. He had like 160 yards. Like when was the last time Mixon did that? So give credit to the Texans. They're looking better. They obviously have a lot of weapons. They're gonna score the points, and with them at home, I have them winning. I do think the Bears keep this close for a half, but eventually that offense is just too much.
Yeah, they're going to be able to pour it on eventually. And Nico Collins is able to still have a place in this offense. Like,
He's looking like the true wide receiver one. I'm
yeah,
gonna be
which is
real.
crazy. And it's great. I mean, I think it makes sense. He's been there longer. He has a better connection. Diggs is getting older as well. So it's like, I don't know. I think it makes sense to have Nico Collins as wide receiver one. I'm glad he was able to keep his share of targets.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
he's looked good.
yeah, totally. I'm not liking the look of Monday night with the way that Cousins looked against Steelers. Uh, I think Falcons versus Eagles could get pretty ugly. That's
Now,
yeah.
oh, are you still
No,
going?
you go ahead.
All right. I mentioned TJ Watt earlier. I think that the Falcons just couldn't figure out what to do with him, and that was what Kirk was worrying about, and it made his job a lot harder. I he didn't have the great game. I think he gets back to where he has been. maybe not this game because the Eagles have a good defense too, but they don't have a star-studded pass rusher like TJ Watt. I mean, they have a great defensive line together, but like they don't have a rusher like that. And you saw them use Pitts and Bijan looked decent, and they used Drake London a little bit. So like I think they're doing better offensively than they had the past couple years, but their defense needs to be able to step up here, get some make Hurts turn the ball over. Um and then Kirk needs to capitalize on that with touchdowns, not field goals. Because that's what the Packers kind of did. They kind of had a lot of field goals in that Friday night game. I think the Falcons can make this close. But I do think the Eagles win as well. But I think this will be a bounce back week for Kirk just because they don't have to deal with the best pass rusher in the league. Sorry, Zach, with TJ Watt.
He's not the best pass rusher in the league, but anyway, um, he is pretty crazy and he's very scary. And I also like I think Kirk is definitely going to outplay his game against the Steelers, not just because he was going against the Steelers who were amazing on defense, but um, I think it's just he'll be easier for him to settle in. I think he's going to hit Kyle Pitts a little bit more. I think Drake London's going to have a way better game. Like he's not going to have a game like that again. So especially with against the Eagles who they're not porous in DB, but I mean I'm not I don't fear them necessarily. Uh, the Falcons also have a really solid defense. Like I I feel like they kept it pretty close against the Steelers. I mean if you have an offense that's even a little bit more competent, I think that you're going to be able to keep some of those points off the board just because uh you're going to be more fresh. I think it's I don't know. I think that that game could have been a lot easier for the Falcons had they had some competence on offense. And like you said, they don't have to settle for field goals. So I do think that it does get ugly though, man. Like I think that as long as Hurts doesn't turn the ball over like he did, had two turnovers in the Packers game. If he's able to keep it below two, I think that this is going to be a pretty convincing victory.
Yeah, I think he will keep it between two. I don't know. I don't think I'm going like a blowout like you are, but
Well, I don't think it's a blowout. I think it's probably going to be like 14 points.
yeah. That's I mean that's I would say like 10 to 14 is the range I'm in. But I do think the Falcons will look better.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I wish like the Bears Texans game was Monday night, and I wish the Lions had Sunday night football again.
Hmm.
So I feel like Bucks Lions is a game to that should be in prime time, not at 1 o'clock. But it is what it is. I mean, I think NFL season. Good thing, like no major injuries happened on the field, so I hope the season keeps coming like this. So I mean, McCaffrey was hurt. Well, other than Jordan Love, so that I don't even know what I'm talking about. Jordan Love happened,
The Panthers
which
lost Derek White.
I didn't even know that. So I
Yeah,
guess
he
I'm
had a
not paying enough attention.
torn
So
meniscus, but it wasn't like crazy. Like we didn't have like four quarterbacks go down or anything like that like we had last season. So hopefully we can, like you said, keep that trend.
yeah, so yeah, hopefully people can just stay healthy and we can have competitive football.
Yeah.
I know me and Zach are looking for our teams to be competitive this week, and we hope for you too. Zach, do you got anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see y'all next week.
Peace.
Peace.